Welcome, everybody. This is the video version of Tales from the Jarside, the Kousen IT newsletter. This week's title is Tales from the Jarside, Archives in Gradle, featuring Groovy versus Kotlin and some controversy that's emerged since I published the newsletter, AI experiments, and more tweets, toots, skeets, and whatever the heck they're called on threads. The subtitle this week is, what do you call a flock of baby sheep rolling down a hill? A landslide. There's your rim shot. I am currently in, a suburb of Denver. I think it's Westminster, waiting for UberConf to start. That's the big no fluff, just stuff destination conference that takes place in the Denver area every July. I'm giving a workshop tomorrow, full day workshop, and about 6 other talks, I think. I mean, it's a lot of stuff going on. More about that later. But that's why this is happening a little bit later in the day, and it's happening from a hotel room. So the lighting is what it is. I'll try to lean in and make it a little clearer. But let's take a look at what we have. So this week we start off with, let's see that I got the date right this time. This is the newsletter for the week of July 9th through 16th. Today's the 17th, so that works, 2023. This week was crazy. I mean, I had way too much to do this week. I taught a private Groovy programming for Java developers course, which was fun, except for the fact it was in the India time zone. And that's a lot of hours. So I actually taught the class on 3 consecutive nights for me, from about 10:30 p.m. until 3:30 a.m. And if that's all I'd had to do, that would have been enough. But no, I also had a full day no fluff virtual workshop called Deep Dive into Spring and a half day workshop on Gradle. And I'm only barely recovering now. And now, of course, I'm in Denver. Oh, and the O'Reilly course also on Spring and Spring Boot. So the fun never ended this week. Very busy. Regular readers of and listeners to, and of course, video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads, at least until any real actual jarheads object, and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the included button. You can see I'm already subscribed, so I don't see the button. That does give me my cue to check once again for the YouTube channel to see how that's doing. If I take a look this
Unit
week,
5 is a fantastic
stop the autoplay here. Looks like we are up to 476 subscribers, which is okay. I mean, getting there, making progress. There's a new video this week, which went up very recently. It actually went up Sunday morning. So Sunday in the morning time frame, and it's called Gradle Zip Unzip Hooray, right? Zip Unzip Hooray. Yeah, it didn't work. Figuring out how to make zip files and unzip them and do jar files with Gradle. So there's the thumbnail and everything, and I'll talk a little bit more about that because that's generated, well, not controversy exactly, but a few Gradle people have stepped in to say, yeah, you're doing it wrong. So let's talk about that. Okay, let's start with that topic in general. So as many of you know, I used to teach the Introduction to Gradle Build Tool course for Gradle Incorporated online every other month. I did that for about 4 or 5 years, maybe. They decided to take that training in-house and have completely restructured it. Just to give you an idea what I mean, if I go to gradle.org, which is the main site for Gradle, for the build tool here, there's a link called Training, and there's a whole path now that involves, there's the intro to Gradle build tool for developers. When I taught it, it was only 1 day. It was 2 days. Now it's 1 day. I'm not sure what the difference is with the one for build engineers. And then they have 3 separate courses, one on dependency management, one on build caching, something for JVM build, something for Android, and then all these advanced ones. I don't know how many of those are available yet, but they are all free. So feel free, go ahead and dig in. The other thing that they did, which was an interesting move, is they have moved all the training classes to use Kotlin, or rather the Kotlin DSL for Gradle. And that's an interesting idea. So I'll have more to say about that as we go. Now, I learned a lot about Gradle from teaching those classes over the years, although it was just a beginner course and I taught it kind of over and over again, but I used to throw in new things and do new stuff, and a couple of videos in my channel are based on what I learned in that class. But one topic that used to be part of the course and then kind of got de-emphasized, was removed over time, was the file manipulation aspects of Gradle. Gradle actually, it works for just projects that have nothing to do with Java, Groovy, Kotlin, any other language. You could do basic file manipulation with Gradle, copying files, renaming them, moving things around. And in this case, I thought I'd say something about working with files. Here's the section in the Gradle user manual here. I guess I have to make that a little smaller to see the overall page, and that. So there's the section on creating archives. And I thought I'd make a little video about how that worked. So one topic I always found kind of interesting, or aspect of it I found interesting, is that there is a built-in Gradle task called zip. There's a type called zip in the Gradle API for making zip archives, but there's no unzip task. And at first I was like, wait, what? And I thought that was confusing, but it turns out that if you read the documentation, they treat zip files kind of like their own separate file systems. So when you unzip, what you're actually doing, believe it or not, is a copy task. At any rate, here was an example of creating a zip, and this is using the Groovy DSL. So you can see my little task called zip of type zip, and it's got a couple of froms and an into. And again, the little bit of misleading part is that the into has to do with building a dist folder inside the zip file, because there's already a base plugin that has a convention as to where the zip file is going to go and what its default name will be. So I go into all that in the video. This is copying all the information from source main Java and source main resources into the zip file and copying the README into a dist directory inside the zip file. So far, so good. Now that's the Groovy DSL. And I did something that is no longer in favor anymore. And I did it down here as well. It's that I wrote the task in the ad hoc fashion of saying task space and then the name and then the type. And the problem with that is that that is eager configuration. And the Gradle people really like lazy configuration. Why do anything in configuration time that you don't need to do? Let's make it so you only have to do it if it's requested. And therefore you convert that to task.register with the name and the type there, and that makes it configured lazily. So at any rate, I did do that during the video and showed the difference, even though I got to admit, all this is doing is invoking a couple of methods. The from methods are basically just setting the directories to copy, and the into is just setting up another directory. It's not like those tasks are going to take a lot of time, certainly not in this case. Nevertheless, if you don't need to do it, why do it? I get that. At any rate, here's the corresponding unzip. And I used a depends on, because what's the point in unzipping something if the zip doesn't exist? So I decided to go ahead and create the zip as part of the unzip task and then unzip it. And the really interesting part is the method called zip tree. Zip tree is what wraps around the zip file and expands it. If you didn't say zip tree wrapped around the archive file, then the from would just copy the archive file to another directory. And I wanted to copy it. I wanted to unzip it rather. So I put zip tree and task.zip.archive file and figured, hey, everything looks good. I'm copying it into the build directory in the regular layout, creating a directory underneath that called expanded, and it's all good. Everything worked. Then I went and changed it to the Kotlin DSL. So I put in a second folder for the Kotlin DSL, and the zip one looks identical, which we're going to come back to. Other than the fact that you've got double quotes for the strings, you've got parentheses no longer being optional, and you got the type in angle brackets because Kotlin supports what they call reified types, types that are not erased during the compilation process. So that's a neat feature of Kotlin, and I went with that. But then, and again, we're going to have to come back to that one. Then I went to the unzip task, and everything here is okay, except for this long, ugly mechanism to find the zip file. So at any rate, this says register an unzip task of type copy. Again, when you unzip an archive, you're doing a copy task. So I have a from and an into, and the into is the same as with the Groovy one. But the from one, I wanted to give it the path to the generated archive. And I wound up getting all confused with these task providers. Like task.named zip of type zip returns a task provider of type zip. So I thought I had to call get so that then I could get the archive file. And that too is a provider. And then I had to call get again and turn it into an as file. And I went on a little rant about, gee, isn't Groovy simpler? Why do we have to do this Kotlin stuff? Even though, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Kotlin. I really do. And if you're doing Android, then obviously you're going to do Kotlin, and I like it. I like a lot about it. But this seemed unnecessarily complicated. So I made the blog post, and then you saw or not the blog post, the video. And then I did my little rant in the newsletter about how people criticize Groovy. Now, I got to tell you partly what triggered this is that, and it's coming up in the AI section, I used the AI assistant inside IntelliJ to say, okay, how do I access this? Or I asked it for the code. And that's the code it suggested. And then I said, isn't there a simpler way to write that? And it rewrote it, but it was every bit as complicated. And I thought I was stuck with that. And I was wrong. And it was wrong. But I didn't know that. At any rate, I asked it why it used Kotlin. If that's more complicated, why use Kotlin over Groovy? And it gave the normal arguments about Kotlin being efficient and null safe and IDE support and the fact that it's statically typed and all of that. And as a Groovy person, I've heard all these arguments before, and a lot of them just simply aren't true. Groovy is every bit as fast as Kotlin, and in most cases much faster, especially in Gradle. That's been holding Kotlin back for years, is that the Kotlin build files in Gradle, Kotlin DSL, is much slower than the Groovy one, or has been, on anything other than a trivial project. Groovy's also not dynamically typed. It's optionally typed. You can say types if you want. You could even do compile static if you don't want any dynamic behavior at all. But it has this reputation of having the dynamic capability, which is really convenient when it comes up. And it's really not slow anyway, but that's the reputation. Now, Kotlin does have null safety built in at compile time, and that really is a legitimate benefit. Some people choose the language purely for that. I get that. Groovy's null safe operator, ? Is safe navigation, is pretty useful and helps out in many, many cases. But I get it. It's not compile time null safety, but neither's Java either. And that doesn't seem to, well, let's not get on the rant again. Now, the IDE support, as somebody pointed out, the IDE support for Kotlin is really good in JetBrains tools. But if you're a VS Code person, or heaven help you, if you're an Eclipse-based person, yeah, you're not going to enjoy your Kotlin experience. It's a mess over there. Now, the Groovy experience in those IDEs isn't all that great either, I got to admit. But if the same money that had been poured into improving the IDE support for Kotlin had been poured into improving the IDE support for Groovy, that would be better too, But all right, any rate, I put all this stuff in here, and I said I admit I've lost the battle. And I taught my Groovy course this week, and it was bittersweet. Because while I really like Groovy, it just keeps reminding me that, why aren't we using this? Why isn't it more popular than it is? What's the problem here? Even some of the students were like, wow, this really helps. Why doesn't everybody do this? And I'm like, I don't even want to go there. But who knows? And I don't want to start that discussion of why anymore. But that's the rant that was in the newsletter. So here's the nice little picture. This time, I think, did a totally different thumbnail template with the yellows and the reds and everything. And I'm kind of happy with how it came out. I don't know. It looks kind of appealing. And it's the key to a thumbnail is supposed to be very clear and memorable and easy to share, and I think that does the job. I said, if you're wondering why I didn't make all my Groovy versus Kotlin points in the video or in other places, I saw this image on Mastodon, and this is part of one of the principles I live by. It says, pick your battles. No, pick fewer battles than that. put some battles back. That's still too many battles. And yeah, I really go out of my way to avoid conflicts, especially with strangers on the internet. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe I should have stood up for it more and fought more for Groovy, but oh well. The real problem with my video is I learned recently about keyword research on YouTube. Yes, I've been digging into that to try to help my YouTube channel. And it's really sad coming up with topics and doing the keyword research and going, nope, nobody wants that. Nobody cares. The search volume is poor. It's really, disappointing. It's self-selective. I'm making videos about what I want to make videos about, and I'm just going to have to live with that. I don't expect huge numbers out of that anyway. Now, that's where everything resided yesterday. And then I got some feedback. One person said, oh, I still use Groovy, and a lot of us use Groovy, and it's very helpful in build files. And it was nice to hear that. But another person said, boy, you made that Kotlin one really hard. And what I have here is some modifications suggested by Cedric Champeau. I haven't checked these into the GitHub repository yet, but this is where things are headed for the Kotlin DSL. First of all, I can make a variable called the name of the task and use this by task.registering mechanism. In Kotlin, that's called a property delegate. That means if you call get or set on this zip property, it actually uses the register method or registering method inside of tasks. Anyway, same block of code, but this creates the variable. And the benefit to creating the variable is that all this commented out code, the stuff I had in the blog post or in the video, has been replaced by just going, oh, zip tree of zip.map of zip : get archive file. And that's it. And interesting. I mean, you could also write this as map with curly braces, it dot archive file. That'd be another way to do it. But I'm trying to decide if I like this any better or worse, or more importantly, how the heck I was supposed to know that this is the right way to do things without having people say it in the comments or bring it up. I don't know. Looks like another video is in the future. So that's what's going on. I'll leave it at that, and I'll have another video at some point. Let's move on. This section is called AI experiments, and I talked about the fact that at UberConf here, I have a talk that is scheduled for Wednesday called Practical AI Tools for Java Developers. I spent a fair amount of time on that, and it's kind of something I've been wanting to spend time on anyway, mostly because there's a revolution going on right now. It's the biggest change in the development world since the rise of the internet, really. And not all of it's good, but not all of it's bad either. And I'm trying to decide what parts I like. For example, I've been using GitHub Copilot for months, and I really rely on it. But part of that is because my job is largely teaching classes that I teach over and over again. Therefore, Copilot kind of knows where I'm headed with a lot of these features, and therefore guesses the right code a lot. It still guesses wrong, but it does guess the right code a lot. So I found that useful. Now, for other tasks, I do like ChatGPT, and I have a paid subscription, so I can use GPT-4, and there's no question GPT-4 is considerably better than GPT 3.5, even the turbo version. Now, I played with Google's Bard as well for reasons that have to do with the fact my data that I wanted to incorporate was in Google Docs, and I wanted to generate Google Docs with the output. And Bard was pretty good about that. I couldn't quite automate it, but I could routinely make it so just here, do the next one and click a button, do the next one and click a button. That worked pretty well until I looked at the results that Bard was producing, which are mediocre at best. But okay. I recently heard about Claude. Here, let me open that one up just in case you haven't seen that one. Claude is from the company called Anthropic, and I've done a couple of experiments with it. Claude is only available right now in the US and the UK, of all places, even though it turns out Anthropic is based in Silicon Valley. Now, there was a whole article in the New York Times like last weekend about Anthropic and Claude and how they have such great ethical concerns at the company. They're constantly worrying about protecting humanity and all of that, like this is a major crisis. I heard somebody compare that fear, of protecting humanity from, generalized AI, as the analogy was, that's like worrying about overpopulation on Mars at this point. Not something you got to get into right now. I don't know. I mean, all I know is that any prediction I make longer than 2 years in the IT industry is wildly uncertain. The error bars are bigger than the prediction. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable making predictions. But I did experiment with Claude. And one of the nice things about Claude is that you can attach files. See, there's a little link here that says add files, 5 max, 10 megabytes each, accepts PDF, text, CSV, everything. And that's really nice. You could just put in data and have it analyze the data and find correlations and all kinds of stuff. So I have a feeling I'm going to be playing with Claude a lot more in the future. Okay, I mentioned all that. So let's go down here. Now, OpenAPI, the company behind ChatGPT, the one that Microsoft basically now kind of owns, has an API for coding to ChatGPT. And I did, in fact, I wrote up some Java code in order to access it. I mean, they do have some APIs already available. The Java one's very thin, but really all it is it's a REST-driven web service. So you have a series of links and you do get, post, put, and delete, the normal REST API stuff. So I figured to do that in Java, I made a bunch of records. I used the HTTP client embedded in Java, even though it's still kind of verbose. And I managed to do a hello world example, and it works. It's not great, but it's fine. It probably cost me 1/10 of a cent to experiment. I mean, for the stuff I do, it's very, very inexpensive. But for real applications, it might get pricey. It might accumulate. So far, so good. There's another API, which I think I mentioned down here, that OpenAPI provides, which is called Whisper. Whisper is one of those voice-to-text transcription tools. So audio to text. And I use a tool I've mentioned here. Let me just bring it up just to show you what it is. It's called Mac Whisper. This is just a GUI that somebody put as a front end on the Whisper tool. And you just click on Open File or Open Files. You select a bunch of files and say go, and it generates the transcription for you. This nice little GUI lets you put in some commonly misspelled words, especially if they're technical. Like it never figures out how to spell Makito. It's tried like 10 different ways, but I have them all in there now as global search and replace and things like that. So you can do a recording, you could transcribe a podcast, you could record app audio. I liked it. I thought it was a really good tool, and I've used it a lot. I'll bring that up in the talk as well. Now, there's another tool, which I think I mentioned a little further down. There's GitHub Copilot X, which is the stuff in progress, the stuff they're thinking about. So I want to show some of those features as well. And I use Canva a lot for my web-related stuff, for my videos. And Canva has built in something called Magic Eraser, where you could upload an image and then say, yeah, this person in the background of my photo of us, together, they're kind of, I don't want them in there. And you could just erase them. And it'll fill in the background with that, which is scary, but kind of neat. They also have one called Background Remover, so that I do that with my images. I take a picture of myself, I put it in there, click on the background remover, and then it's transparent, and I could drop it in front of some other image. That's how I make my thumbnails. So that's pretty good, although lots of tools have that. And they have something called Beat Sync. Oh, I guess I forgot to italicize that. You can drop music in as the background of your video or short or whatever, and it will synchronize the transitions of the video breaks with the beats of the music. Interestingly enough, that's kind of neat. So if we have time, I'll show that. And of course, I've talked many times about Descript. Descript, which will transcribe your video, but also will use a computer-generated voice to narrate part, and even take your own voice and train the neural network on that, and then can use your own voice to illustrate something. I need to do a demo of that during the talk. Finally, the thing that I mentioned I spent time with is that AI assistant inside of JetBrains. The results have been decidedly mixed. What I do like about it is that it can create Git commit statements for you. So it'll write in the commit description, what was changed, what happened here, and that's good because that's kind of annoying and tedious, and it'll do that for you. So that's very helpful. It's supposedly good at suggesting names for things too, which, that's one of the hard problems in computer science. I guess that's good. I haven't used that much. And the refactoring of code, like I say, keeps getting me into trouble, even though it's okay. I'm still trying to decide how to use it in a way that's productive. So I'll let you know how the presentation goes. Probably say something about it next week. This may be some future video stuff. Let's move on to our tweets and toots, etc. So last week, I mentioned I did join the Threads app. I didn't stay. I browsed it. I looked at it a little bit. But the Threads app is an algorithmic feed that's full of brands who think they're funny and other people trying to market stuff and celebrities sharing things that I'm really not interested in. And the number of people I follow, I mean, they're there, but they don't seem to show up in the feed very much at all. And there's also no reverse chronological feed either, so I can't resume where I left off. I just have to scroll down and see what happens to be there. It's very hard to customize too, and I got tired of that very, very quickly. Now, maybe I'm not the target audience. I don't know. They also deliberately avoid politics, which, okay, but news as well. And it's like, isn't that what Twitter was for, kind of? Was, rapidly find out what was going on in the world and how people were reacting to it, and they're going to throw all that out in favor of fluff. Now, keeping in mind it's coming from Facebook, I'm sorry, I'm not calling them meta. They cannot have that word. I'm sorry. That's too valuable a word in my field. I'm not calling Facebook meta. But at any rate, that's Facebook, right? I mean, shallow, unimportant fluff, and they just try to get people to stay, and they've already kind of lost me. So I'm wondering how their numbers are going to hold up, and I already saw an article. I don't think I put it in here. I already saw an article that said that their 1 week adoption rate has dropped like a rock. People are there, they stay a little while, they leave. Now, I also am not posting my newsletter on Threads, mostly because it's mobile only, and that would require I'd have to create the post and post it in there. I haven't bothered. Maybe we'll see. I'll see how that goes overall. I also don't trust Zuckerberg to do anything, so we'll see how that goes. As for Blue Sky, it's not all that interesting. There's a couple people I follow who are very, very active, and I might actually have to unfollow them because they're so high in volume. But without them, not a lot going on. So I'm not sure what to do with that one either all that much. It's okay, but it's not like I trust them either. So we'll see. It's pretty bland, and they had some kind of huge controversy, some drama happened last week. I think it had to do with users joining and using like racist slurs in their username, and Blue Sky was unable to block it, and then unsure whether they even should block it, and it's like, yeah, here we go. I mean, just a reminder that Twitter was no picnic even before Musk took over. So, based on a suggestion by a jarhead, hi Meg, I did join the Post News app. That one really is for journalists. It's all news items and things there. It's okay. It doesn't seem to update all that quickly. Maybe I just don't follow enough news sites. I don't want to pay for all these news sites either, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. So I followed Meg, though, and I did post a newsletter. We'll see. This cartoon was pretty interesting. It said, pick your social network. Goebbels, as in Goebbels, from the propaganda minister and the Nazis, free and open debate with Nazis and conspiracy theorists. You will not replace us, ... with another app. Well, that's obviously Twitter now. Influenza with 2 Z's. Follow whoever you like, but we're going to show you who we want, right? Hustlin' Hank, the life guru, 14 million followers. Just pop my morning supplements, promo code X. I'm not exactly sure which one that's supposed to be. Probably Threads, but maybe not. Maybe that's Blue Sky. Happy Time Fun Feed, a politics-free zone brought to you by the world's worst authoritarians. Well, that's got to be Threads then. At Happy Time Fun Feed, we discourage negative talk about things like human rights abuses. Yeah, that sounds like suck, doesn't it? The one down in the left corner is skunkable. Spray your enemies with sick owns or get skunked. Pungent, dude. I don't know which one that's supposed to be. I have no idea. Let me know if you have an idea. Of course, Big Mammoth, right? Algorithm free, all of the scientists and political thinkers who might save us from total destruction. And the one post there says, please get off of Gobler. Right. Well, that's obviously Mastodon. And finally, it says, there's no way I can post to all of these without spending my entire life on social media. And the reply is, I think that's the point. What that leaves out, of course, unless one of these is that, is LinkedIn, which I spend more time on than I expected. And I suppose Facebook. And then there's a total afterthought is Substack Notes as well. I mean, I don't look at the notes feed very often, but it is there. Okay, my app of choice these days is Big Mammoth. Well, Mastodon. That's the only one where I spend any real time. And speaking of threads, here was the post. It says, apparently I'm not alone. The honeymoon period for threads is over. Who knew people want to connect with each other instead of being force-fed sludge from brands and influencers? Quote, on Tuesday and Wednesday, the platform's number of daily active users was down about 20% from Saturday, and the time spent per user was down 50% from 20 minutes to 10 minutes, unquote. Yeah, and Threads still has months of the same old content moderation problems ahead of it. Yep, that's from CNBC, apparently. That pretty much matches my experience. So I saw a separate news article that suggested Twitter usage is off big time as well, but I don't know how that's all going to play out. This one was just something entertaining, song cue, and it's got two bunny rabbits in the air with looks like kung fu going on. It says, everybody was kung fu fighting. Yeah, exactly. They were fast as lightning, no doubt. Now try getting that song out of your head for the next hour. I'd love to know what that picture actually is all about, but maybe I don't want to know. I don't know. Must admit, it took me a long time to get that song out of my head. This one, I thought it was fake. It made me roll my eyes. I titled it Living in a Glass Onion. It says, oh, come on, basically. And the news item was Tesla board members investigated whether company resources were misused in a secret project to build a glass house for Elon Musk. And that's on a Wall Street Journal article. And if you saw Glass Onion, you would just be laughing and laughing, just as the director of Glass Onion, Ryan Johnson, replied. Ha 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 ha. I mean, how clueless can you be? I mean, I know once you're a billionaire, you're completely isolated from the real world, and you're surrounded by people who adore you and want things from you all the time. I get it. But wow, that's clueless. So Ryan Johnson made the Benoit Blanc movies Knives Out and Glass Onion. Did I miss linking Glass? Oh, I linked it the second time. If Elon is really so clueless as to emulate the idiot billionaire in Glass Onion, I forgot his name. Wait a minute. So his name was Miles Braun, played by Edward Norton. Great job by Edward Norton. It worked out really well. Okay. If Elon is really so clueless as to emulate Miles Braun, well, I'd laugh too. And I didn't want to check to see if it's true, but I had to do something. And I found an article in Architectural Digest on that house, and one on something called Jalopnik that said Elon Musk may have used Tesla's funds to build his own house. And then the big one is in the Wall Street Journal, which I can't even read because you can't even read one article in the Wall Street Journal if you don't subscribe. Commercialism at its finest, right? Capitalism, I should say. Okay, trivia time. It said, wow, did you know? And apparently somebody put in the comments on IMDb the trivia about Home Alone 2 Lost to New York. It says Donald Trump is the only cast member from Home Alone 2 Lost to New York to have been permanently banned from Twitter after encouraging an armed resurrection. I wonder if that's still there. Again, I didn't really want to look. Okay, I guess I should go check. Hang on. Okay, I just went and searched. There were about 120 comments on that film, and Trump was mentioned a couple times because he does do a cameo at the end, but I didn't see that comment. So I gotta believe somebody had deleted that. This seems to imply there's 127 comments. That may be about right. And I didn't really read them in detail. I just kind of skimmed them, but I didn't see that one. So be it. And of course, the ban on Twitter is already over. So there's permanent and there's permanent, but still. This was great. I love this idea. If they call you resources, as in human resources, you get to call them overhead. And yeah, isn't that phenomenal? They're overhead. Yeah, I think that's great. Seems only fair. This was clever for interview technique. It said, interviewer, give me an example of a time when you took control of a situation. And me, no, you give me an example. Interviewer, lol, okay, that was pretty impressive. Me, I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go. Interviewer, being led away by security. What is happening right now? Yeah, pretty clever. This nerd joke cracked me up. In the process, the mighty process, the I.O. sleeps tonight. In the process, the quiet process, the I.O. sleeps tonight. A sink await, a sink await, a sink await, a sink await. Yeah, all right. Hush my thread pool, don't fear my thread pool, the I.O. sleeps tonight. Yeah, at any rate, very clever for concurrency, although makes you wonder why some of those aren't out of order, you know. If you know, you know. My only concurrency joke is the time traveler one. Bartender says, we don't serve time travelers here. And a time traveler walks into a bar. Yeah, okay. This one on AI goals, this was from SMBC Comics. It says, so what do? I work in AI alignment problems. See, there's a chance humanity will make an AI, and by accident, it won't want to kill all humans, even though we obviously deserve to die. I'm trying to find a way to guarantee the robot both sees us as an enemy and believes the only solution is total annihilation. Wow, what's your method? Twitter, mostly. And Zach Weinersmith, who wrote this, said he just still boggled that he made that years ago. So yeah, there it is. And finally, this woman left Twitter. It says, former Twitter employee resigns with the rate limited exceeded cake. And here's a zoom in on the cake, which I think I can click on here. Rate limit exceeded. Please wait a few moments and then try again. Yep. So have a great week, everybody. Here's the video version. This week was nuts. The upcoming week is all at UberConf. Hopefully things will quiet down a little bit. And thank you very much for listening. And I will see you all again next week. Take care, everybody.